I monitor and get updates when the Toyota Times, which is, the company publication, puts out articles, and it's often about the car business. It's often about the Toyota production system. There was one that really caught my eye, especially for this, because it was an article about Toyota applying the Kaizen methodology to help local coffee farmers in a village in Thailand, which
Yep.
kind of goes to show, like, yeah, Kaizen can apply to everything, kind of focused on quality and productivity and quality of life for the farmers. So a great application of Kaizen.
Yeah, and they have a good chunk of their supply chain in Thailand, and have been plugged in the community there. I know when they had massive floods shortly after uh, the tsunami and earthquake that wrecked Japan, it took out more of their supply chain. So it's great. They do tend to work in their communities, and they've done that for quite a while to try to bring what they do, and they've done that here in the United States with food kitchens and other
Mm,
things.
right, right.
So, yeah, the thing is, local coffee farmers, they are often very strapped, very thin margins, very dependent on the weather, to be certain. And, and yeah, a little Kaizen could go a long way. They don't have a lot of chances to go out and do benchmarking studies and learn from each other. And, and it's kind of a field where there's not a lot of competitive advantages to performing a little better. It's kind of a rising tide lifts all boats. So I think finding ways to improve yields non-chemically, but finding ways to improve yields and outputs and labor and all that at the farm level is a great use of Kaizen. But the real problem is going to be trying to figure out how to spread practices because you can't go work with every farm, right?
Sure. Yeah, and there were a lot of elements of what Toyota was involved in, a mix of, some technology, so they talk about designing, and I imagine this was a Toyota investment in a irrigation system to help circulate water, to alleviate drought conditions. Looking at standardized work when you talk about improving yield. I've been on a coffee farm once in Hawaii, and I think they're typically hand picked. I don't know if that's only the fact. I think that's pretty standard, but it's a Toyota. You think the farmers would be teaching Toyota about this part, but it said that they taught farmers to, I think, kind of pick and choose, harvesting only the mature coffee cherries, as they're called, instead of clearing everything and then sorting the good from the bad. So I
Yep.
think that probably affect quality and reducing waste. And then, the other thing I think that stood out was, kind of Toyota talking to the farmers again, about a long-term mindset
Hmm.
of focusing on quality, and any good quality story has data, like their quantitative quality tasting scores went up over a period of years of that partnership. And it said allowed them to label it a specialty coffee. They probably get a higher price.
Yeah, without a doubt. No, that's absolutely true. Yeah. And so I think that is, again, that's the output measure was, more about the quality. And yeah, if you can, I mean, the amount that they raise the quality scores is a significant chunk, right? 76 to 85. And you kind of go, okay, that's a 10-point bump. But, I'm kind of wondering like, what's the floor on coffee? Cause it's not, you know, 5, right?
Mm.
It's a weird, like it's a score system, but it kind of cuts off at a pretty high number, I would think. I actually haven't looked this up. At what's cupping score do you actually just not even just discard the beans, just throw them away?
Sure.
Um, so percentages in terms of what's the available range to you, it's actually a huge improvement. And yeah, that's the thing is that if you can improve the price per pound you get, there's nothing you can probably do in the yields to get as much improvement as improving the actual quality of the beans you're shipping.
I did a quick search. And it says that the scores typically go from 60 to 100.
Yeah.
So they started off in what was called commercial grade at 76. So not at the lowest end of that range, but they were able to bump it to 82, which put them in the 80 plus specialty range. And they were now at 85.5, which is getting into what they call high grade specialty. And then 90 plus are like competition winning coffees.
Yeah. So if you consider, 60 to 100 the range, that's like a 25, they basically went, closed 25% of the available window. Um,
Well,
in just 6 years, right? And that's the other thing I think that's important here is this was not a short term thing. This took a while.
yeah. Well, and I think I see a clarification here. The score range technically can go from 0 to 100, but I think it wouldn't be sellable below 60. I
Right.
think that 60 plus is where they start calling it commercial grade.
Right. And below that, you're just grinding it up for something. But so yeah, to me, the available range is 60 to 100 in terms of actually selling your beans. And if you're making something lower than that, then you're probably in business very quick. So a lot of hard work, a lot of study, a lot of years, a lot of harvests. And that's, an important thing of, and limited capital, right? They did apply capital and they probably needed Toyota's help with that. But, a PDSA mentality, experimentation, improvements, incremental, all added up to a massive output gain over a period of 6 years. Um, so yeah, don't, you know, any one of those improvements might have not seemed that big a deal, except maybe the automated irrigation system. But it all added up over a long period of time to a pretty big net gain.
Yeah. I mean, the irrigation might have been just the necessary to stay in business improvement, and then the incremental quality gains are key. So we'll link to the article on the show notes. There's a lot of photos, and then the other thing, and this is really what caught my eye intentionally, because the headline on the piece says "Coffee on a Slide: Toyota's Kaizen brings more smiles to Thai farmers and cafes." And there's a GIF of a manual conveyor, you want to call it, of reducing wasted steps, of delivering the drink from the barista to the customer pickup point using kind of like this rail system, and like the cup is set down in this little carrier. And probably the real technology here is how to stop it without spilling the coffee when it comes to the end and hits a pump.
Right. Yeah, that would be that I'm sure whatever experiments they did there uh had a few failure modes there. And you and I have talked in a previous episode about, how much is the exchange with a barista,
Yeah.
a little bit of chit chat, part of the value proposition. Um, this obviously takes that away, but in a limited basis, you would also kind of wonder, well, okay, this is fun. I want to experience it. Um, so I, I would say I probably, if you lay out your counter right, you have a lot of the final coffee prep where the customers pick it up, and it's
Yeah.
not very much transportation needed. But
Well, so I look at this, and to play devil's advocate, they've automated the waste
yeah,
as
exactly.
opposed to changing the layout of the coffee bar. And maybe the layout was just inherently terrible given the space. And
And Toyota has for a long time known that conveyance is waste, right? So
Mhm.
it's and automating it is automating waste. So I think either this was a gimmick or the right answer wasn't available. Um and or it's just an experiment. Like, let's see how this goes and see if
Yeah,
people like it and see if
yeah,
it's fun. And I have to say, if a local coffee shop had a whole bunch of automation, short of pulling the shot, um, I would go just to experience it. Um, but then I may hate it. That's the other that's the part of the experiment, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a time and a place. Like I'll make a sushi comparison where like, okay, the best sushi product and experience is when you're sitting at the counter and the chef is making one piece at a time and handing it to you and you eat it and you have some interaction maybe. There's also a time when I enjoy going to a conveyor belt sushi place
Yeah.
where there's no interaction. You just grab a plate or you put in a special order and a fun little vehicle comes around the upper track. Well, yeah, that's just it's different. It's all sushi, but it's different experiences.
Yep. Yep. And so yeah, I'll look for that in the US. When it comes here, if it comes here. Um, but it probably won't come to your local shop. It'll probably be a chain. Cares a little less about the smile. And with labor challenges, struggles to get people that want to smile, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
because that's part
Uh,
of it. If you hire people because you need the labor to make the coffee and you just can't hire people that want to smile for the customers, yeah, maybe I remove that problem by not even having the interaction.
yeah,
So we'll see. But a fun Kaizen application.
yeah.
Uh, but I would be curious what the evaluation metric was for it, right? So
Yeah. Well,